I get it. You scroll through glossy Amazon photos, read a handful of glowing headlines, and still end up with a receiver that looks great on paper but leaves the living room sounding flat, or forces you into a maze of settings you never figured out. That feeling of "I should have known better" is what makes me pause before every new AV purchase. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When I started comparing compact AV receivers for a modest 2-speaker setup, the Marantz Stereo 70s kept popping up. It promises 75 watts per channel, 4K/120 and even 8K video handling, plus a full suite of streaming options like Spotify Connect, Airplay 2, Bluetooth, and HEOS multi-room. Those are the kind of headline specs that usually convince me to click add to cart, but I wanted to know how they translate when you actually plug in a turntable, a game console, or a streaming stick. First off, the size. The chassis is about the height of a small bookshelf speaker, so it slides nicely behind a wall-mounted TV without hogging the rack space. That's a real win for apartments or anyone who wants a clean look. The front panel is all matte black with a single blue LED that pulses when a Wi-Fi stream is active. No clutter of knobs or confusing menus. When you power it up, the first thing you notice is how quickly the HDMI handshake happens. I ran a PlayStation 5 into one of the 6 HDMI inputs, and the console was recognized instantly, with 4K 120 video passing through without any flicker. That kind of plug-and-play reliability saves you from the endless HDMI loop troubleshooting that some lower-priced units demand. Now, the audio side. I paired the Stereo 70S with a pair of bookshelf speakers I already owned, which are rated at 90 dB sensitivity. The 75 watts per channel felt more than enough for everyday movies and music. The built-in HDAM, high-definition amplification module, gave the mids a warm, forward presence that reminded me of a larger Marantz receiver I used a few years back. When I spun a vinyl record through the dedicated phono input, the signal was clean and the rumble filter didn't over-attenuate the low end, something I've seen trip up cheaper amps. For a streaming test, I launched Spotify via the Marantz app on my phone, and the Bluetooth latency was negligible. The track started within a fraction of a second and stayed in sync with the video from my TV. Gaming is where a lot of users trip. The Stereo 70S supports the latest HDMI specs, so when I switched to a Nintendo Switch docked in 4K 60, the image stayed crisp and the audio remained full range, with no sudden drops in volume that can happen when a receiver tries to upmix a stereo signal to surround. The next-level gaming claim feels accurate as long as you're playing on a 2-speaker stereo configuration. The receiver won't magically create a surround field, but it does preserve the original mix cleanly, which is exactly what most gamers want for competitive titles. The streaming side is where the built-in HEOS platform shines. I added a second Marantz device in a different room and linked them through the HEOS app, creating a simple multi-room setup without a separate hub. Music from my phone played on both speakers in perfect sync, and I could drop each zone's volume independently. That's a convenience you rarely get from a receiver that only offers Bluetooth. However, the HEOS interface can feel a little sluggish when you browse large libraries, and there's no native support for lossless tidal hires streams. You have to fall back to the standard 320 kbps Spotify or the AAC streams from Apple Music. If lossless audio is a must-have for you, that's a limitation to keep in mind. One practical weakness I ran into is the lack of a dedicated subwoofer output. The Stereo 70S is a 2-channel unit, so if you ever want to add a 0.1 channel sub for deeper bass, you'll need to use a speaker-level connection or an external crossover. For a pure stereo listening room, that's fine, but anyone dreaming of a home theater vibe will quickly outgrow the design. Also, the remote control is minimalistic. It has volume, input select, and a few source shortcuts, but no direct access to the HEOS menus. You'll end up spending a few minutes in the app to manage playlists or switch between Spotify and Airplay, which some users find inconvenient if they prefer a single-button experience. Who should consider this receiver? If you have a 2-speaker setup, want a sleek, space-saving unit that can handle the latest video formats, and value integrated streaming without adding a separate dongle, the Marantz Stereo 70S hits the sweet spot. It's also a good fit for vinyl enthusiasts who need a solid phono stage but don't want a full-size component. Gamers with a console that outputs a stereo mix will appreciate the clean signal path and the HDMI 2.1 readiness for future devices. Who might skip it? If you're planning a surround sound system, need multiple subwoofer outputs, or want native lossless streaming from services like Tidal or Kobo's, you'll likely be better served by a higher-priced AV receiver that includes those features.